Commander HFY stood on the highest tower of his obsidian fortress, watching the crimson sky burn with the light of 3 dying suns. Below him stretched the endless thornwood forest, where trees grew like massive spears piercing the toxic air. The very ground pulsed with a sickly red glow, and the air shimmered with deadly particles that could kill most galactic species in minutes. This was Korath Prime, the deadliest world in the known galaxy, and it was home. HFY flexed his razor-sharp claws, feeling the familiar weight of his natural armor plating. Standing 3 meters tall, with chitinous black skin that could deflect plasma bolts, he was the perfect predator for this perfect hell. His 4 eyes tracked movement through the forest below, where his warriors hunted the native shadow maw beasts. Each shadow maw was the size of a small starship, with teeth that could bite through metal and hide thick enough to stop artillery shells. The Vorthok had been hunting these creatures for sport for over 3,000 years. A low rumble echoed through the forest as one of his warriors brought down a particularly large shadow maw. HFY watched with satisfaction as the beast's death cry sent smaller predators scurrying for cover. This was the natural order of things on Korath Prime. The strong survived, the weak became food, and the Vorthok ruled over it all. His communication device chirped with an incoming message. Sub-Commander Kethnox appeared as a holographic projection, his scarred face showing the respect due to his superior. "Commander, our outer system sensors have detected something unusual," Kethnox reported. "Unknown vessels approaching from the Rim territories. They do not match any ship designs in our databases." HFY turned away from the window, his interest mildly stirred. "How many ships?" 7 vessels, sir. Small by our standards. Each appears to carry perhaps 200 or 300 crew members at most. Such tiny numbers amused HFY. Vorthok warships carried thousands of warriors, each one capable of tearing apart a dozen enemies with their bare claws. What do these newcomers want? They claim to seek diplomatic contact, Commander. They call themselves humans. Humans. HFY had never heard the name before, but that was not unusual. The galaxy was full of weak species that occasionally worked up the courage to attempt contact with the Vorthok Empire. Most learned quickly that they were not welcome. Those who did not learn were given more permanent lessons. "Where are they from?" HFY asked. "The 3rd Spiral Arm, sir, a region we have never bothered to explore. Their technology appears primitive. Their ships use chemical propulsion and basic fusion reactors." HFY almost laughed. Chemical rockets were the tools of species that had barely learned to leave their home planets. The Vorthok had mastered quantum tunneling drives millennia ago. These humans were probably another species of soft-bodied weaklings who had somehow stumbled across faster-than-light travel. "What do they look like?" he asked. Keth-Nox hesitated. "They appear to be fragile, sir. Bipedal like us, but much smaller. Perhaps 2 meters tall at most. They have soft skin with no natural armor. No claws, no fangs worth mentioning. They seem to require artificial atmospheres to survive." This was even more amusing. Creatures, so weak they could not even breathe natural air, were attempting to make contact with the masters of the deadliest world in the galaxy. HFY had seen many species try to prove themselves against the Vorthok over the centuries. Crystalline beings who could survive in the vacuum of space. Gas-form entities that could phase through solid matter. Silicon-based life forms that fed on radiation. All of them had failed to survive even one day on Korath Prime. "Shall I first order them to leave our territory, Commander?" Kethnox asked. HFY considered this. The Vorthok Empire controlled 12 star systems, all built around worlds that other species considered uninhabitable. Death worlds, poison worlds, radiation-blasted wastelands where only the strongest could thrive. The Empire's reputation was built on fear and respect. Other galactic civilizations gave the Vorthok a wide berth, knowing that any challenge to their territory would result in swift and brutal retaliation, but these humans intrigued him. It had been many years since anyone had been foolish enough to approach Korath Prime directly. Perhaps it would be entertaining to watch another species learn the hard way why the Vorthok were the apex predators of the galaxy. No, HFY decided. Let them come. But make it clear that they approach at their own risk. Any species that wishes to deal with the Vorthok Empire must first prove they are worthy of our attention. How shall they prove this, Commander? Smiled, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth, the same way all others have tried. They must survive on Korath Prime for one full planetary rotation. 26 standard hours. If they can do that, we will consider their request for diplomatic contact. Kethnox nodded approvingly, and if they fail, then their ships leave our territory and never return, assuming any of them survive to pilot their vessels home. The challenge was traditional. Over the centuries, many species had attempted it. Warriors from the crystal mines of Vega 7, who could withstand temperatures that would melt starship hulls. Hive-mind insects from the outer rim, whose individual drones felt no fear of death. Mechanical beings who needed neither air nor food to function. None had lasted more than a few hours on Korath Prime. The planet itself was the Vorthok's greatest weapon. The atmosphere was a toxic mix of chemicals that would burn through most. Protective suits. The temperature swung from freezing to scorching within minutes as the three suns moved across the sky. The ground was saturated with radiation from ancient wars, and the very water was acidic enough to dissolve metal. But it was the native life that made Korath Prime truly deadly. The Shadow Maws were just the beginning. Deep in the Thornwood Forest lived creatures that had no names in any galactic language. Things that could phase in and out of reality, hunt by scent across continents, or simply appear wherever their prey felt safest. The Vorthok had evolved alongside these monsters. Their ancestors had been forced to become perfect predators just to survive. Every generation had been tested by Korath Prime's horrors, and only the strongest had lived to pass on their genes. After 3,000 years of this natural selection, the Vorthok had become something beyond what most species could imagine. They were living weapons, shaped by the deadliest world in the galaxy, and now these humans wanted to test themselves. Against that legacy, the HFY walked to his weapon rack and selected his favorite ceremonial blade. The metal had been forged from the bones of a Void Reaper, one of Korath Prime's apex predators. The creature had taken 17 Vorthok warriors to bring down, and its remains had been crafted into weapons fit for commanders. He would watch these humans fail, as all the others had failed, but perhaps their deaths would provide some entertainment. It had been too long since he had seen fear in the eyes of those who dared to challenge the Vorthok Empire. The communication device chirped again. Commander, the human fleet is requesting permission to send a landing party to the surface. Grant their request, the HFY replied. But inform them that once they set foot on Korath Prime, they have 26 hours to prove their worth. No technological assistance beyond basic atmospheric processors. No weapons beyond what they can carry. No rescue if they fail. Understood, sir.
Yes.
The hologram faded. The HFY returned to his window. Soon, he would watch another species learn. Why Korath Prime was called the graveyard of civilizations? These humans, with their soft skin and primitive technology, would last perhaps an hour before the planet claimed them. It would be amusing to watch them try. The crimson suns continued their dance across the toxic sky, casting shifting shadows through the Thornwood Forest. Somewhere in that nightmare landscape, predators stirred, sensing new prey approaching their domain. Korath Prime was hungry, and the humans were coming to feed it. Captain Kim Daeho stood on the bridge of the UES horizon, watching the view screen display the most terrifying sight he had ever seen. Korath Prime hung in space like a bleeding wound against the stars, its surface covered in swirling clouds of red and black. 3 dying suns cast their final light across the planet, making it glow like a coal in a furnace. Captain, we are receiving a transmission from the Vorthok fleet, announced Communications Officer Park Hae-jin. Her voice was steady, but Kim could see the tension in her shoulders. She had been studying Vorthok language patterns for months, preparing for this moment. Put them through, Kim ordered. The main view screen flickered and showed the interior of a Vorthok warship. Kim had seen the intelligence reports, but nothing had prepared him for the reality of seeing a Vorthok commander in person. Sub-commander. Kethnox towered over his bridge crew, his black chitinous armor gleaming under harsh lighting. 4 red eyes studied the human bridge with obvious contempt. Soft flesh creatures, Kethnox spoke in heavily accented Standard Galactic. You dare approach the territory of the Vorthok Empire. State your purpose before we decide whether to destroy your pathetic vessels. Kim had expected hostility, but the casual threat still sent a chill down his spine. The Vorthok warships surrounding his small fleet were each 3 times larger than his flagship. Their weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. I am Captain Kim Daeho of the United Earth Systems Fleet, he replied formally. We come seeking peaceful diplomatic contact with your empire. Humanity wishes to establish trade relations and cultural exchange. Kethnox made a sound that might have been laughter, but it sounded more like grinding metal. Trade relations. Cultural exchange. You speak like the soft dwellers of the Garden Worlds. Do you know where you are, soft flesh? We are approaching Korath Prime, which our databases list as the capital world of your empire, Kim answered. Korath Prime is not merely our capital, Kethnox replied. It is the deadliest world in the galaxy, a place where only the strong survive and the weak become food for creatures that would tear apart your primitive ships with their bare claws. Behind Kim, Science Officer Choi Min-ho was quietly running scans of the planet below.
Ow.
The readings were even worse than their worst estimates. The atmospheric composition would be lethal to humans within minutes. The surface temperature variations could flash freeze or boil water in seconds. The radiation levels were off their measurement scales. We understand that your world presents unique challenges, Kim said diplomatically. However, humanity has experience with hostile environments. We are prepared to demonstrate our commitment to peaceful relations. Kethnox leaned forward, his eyes focusing on Kim with predatory intensity. You believe your species can survive on Korath Prime? Many have thought the same. Warriors from a dozen star systems have attempted to prove their worth on our world. All have failed. Would be required to prove our worth? Kim asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The traditional challenge, Kethnox replied. A small party from your fleet must survive on the surface of Korath Prime for 1 full planetary rotation. 26 standard hours. Number. Technological assistance beyond basic atmospheric processors. No heavy weapons. No rescue if you fail. Kim felt the weight of every eye on his bridge. This was exactly what Earth Command had feared. The Vorthok were testing them, and the test was almost certainly impossible. But humanity needed access to this sector of the galaxy. The resources here could fuel human expansion for centuries. And if we succeed, Kim asked, then we will consider your request for diplomatic contact, Kethnox answered. But understand this, soft flesh captain. In 3,000 years, no off-world species has ever survived even 1 day on Korath Prime. Your people will die screaming, and their deaths will serve as a warning to others who think themselves worthy of our attention. Ambassador Lee Su-ben stepped forward from where she had been observing the exchange. At 60 years old, she had negotiated with hostile alien species across half the galaxy. Her calm expression never wavered as she addressed the Vorthok commander. We accept your challenge, she said simply. Kim turned to look at her in surprise, but Lee's eyes were fixed on the view screen. She had made her decision, and Kim knew from experience that arguing with her would be pointless. Oh, interesting, Kethnox mused. Very well, soft flesh. You have 1 standard day to prepare your landing party. Choose wisely. The surface of Korath Prime does not forgive weakness. The transmission ended, leaving the human bridge in tense silence. Kim walked over to Lee, keeping his voice low. Ambassador, with respect, this is suicide. Our atmospheric suits can only protect against the environment for a few hours at most. And that's before considering whatever predators are down there. Nodded thoughtfully. Captain, I have read every report about the Vorthok Empire. They respect strength above all else. If we refuse their challenge or ask for easier terms, they will see us as weak. This may be our only chance to establish relations. With them, Security Chief Bang Yan-woo joined their conversation. Ma'am, I've reviewed the combat reports from previous contact attempts. Creatures on that planet can tear through powered armor like paper. My security teams are good, but they're not equipped for this kind of threat. Then we need to approach this differently, Lee replied. We cannot match the Vorthok in terms of physical strength or natural defenses. But humanity has other advantages. Science Officer Choi Minho looked up from his sensor readings. I'm detecting some unusual patterns in the planetary ecosystem. The hostile environment isn't random. There are systems at work down there, complex interactions between the various life forms and the environment itself. What kind of interactions? Kim asked. It's hard to tell from orbit, but I'm seeing evidence of territorial behaviors, migration patterns, even what might be seasonal cycles despite the chaotic climate. If we could understand those patterns, we might be able to work with them instead of against them, Lee finished. Captain, I want to lead the landing party myself. Kim shook his head immediately. Absolutely not. Ambassador, you're too valuable to risk on what amounts to a combat mission. This is not a combat mission, Captain, Lee corrected him. This is a diplomatic mission. The Vorthok are testing our character, not our weapons. They want to see how we respond to their challenge. Chief Medical Officer Dr. Shin Biora had been quietly reviewing the atmospheric data. Ambassador, the environmental hazards alone could kill us before we even encounter any predators. It's the toxic atmosphere, the radiation, the temperature extremes. Then. We adapt, Lee replied simply. Humanity has survived in environments that other species considered impossible. Antarctic research stations, deep ocean trenches, orbital habitats. We've learned to thrive in places where we weren't meant to survive. Kim studied the determination in Lee's eyes and realized she was right. This was not just about surviving. On Korath Prime, this was about proving to the Vorthok that humanity deserved their respect. Very well, he said finally, but I'm going with you. I want our best people on this mission. Over the next several hours, Kim assembled his landing team. Dr. Shin would handle medical and environmental challenges. Choi Minho would analyze the ecosystem and look for patterns they could exploit. Bong Yan-woo would provide security and tactical expertise. Marine biologist Dr. Kong Yuri would study the native life forms as they prepared their equipment. Kim couldn't shake the feeling that they were preparing for their own funerals. The Vorthok had ruled the deadliest world in the galaxy for 3,000 years. They had evolved into perfect predators, shaped by an environment that would kill most species in minutes. But humanity had something the Vorthok might not expect. They had the ability to adapt, to find solutions that didn't rely on brute force. They had survived ice ages and nuclear wars, colonized hostile worlds, and tamed dangerous environments. Tomorrow, they would find out if that was enough to survive. On Korath Prime, the planet continued to spin below them, its red clouds swirling with toxic storms that could level cities. Somewhere in those crimson wastes, creatures waited that had never known defeat. Humanity was about to test itself against the deadliest world in the galaxy. The human landing craft shook violently as it descended through Korath Prime's atmosphere. Dr. Shin Bura gripped her safety harness and watched the whole temperature readings climb to dangerous levels. Outside the small viewports, the sky burned, with colors that had no names in any human language, hull integrity holding at 80%, reported pilot Jang Hoseok through gritted teeth. But I don't know how much more of this we can take. Ambassador Lee Soo-ben remained calm despite the craft bucking like a wild animal. Just get us to the surface in one piece, Lieutenant. We can worry about the return trip later. Captain Kim. Daeho studied the tactical display showing their designated landing zone. It was a crystalline plateau surrounded by what the Vorthok called the Thornwood Forest. From orbit, it had looked like the safest area they could find. Now, as they dropped through the toxic clouds, Kim was beginning to realize that nothing on Korath Prime could be called safe. The landing craft broke through the lowest cloud layer, and the surface of the planet spread out below them. Kim had seen the satellite images, but the reality was far worse. The Thornwood Forest stretched to the horizon, filled with trees that looked more like enormous black spears thrust up from the ground. Each tree was easily 100 meters tall, With thorns the size of sword blades covering every surface between the trees, Kim could see movement, aches, large shapes that moved too quickly to be plants and too deliberately to be mindless beasts. The forest was alive with predators, and they were all looking up at the descending human craft. "Landing in 30 seconds, Zhang announced. The craft hit the crystalline plateau with bone-jarring force. Steam hissed from the landing jets as they fought to keep the vessel upright on the uneven surface. Through the hull, they could hear the wind howling with a sound like screaming voices. Science Officer Choi Minho was already taking readings on his instruments. External temperature is minus 40 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric pressure is 3 times Earth normal. In the air outside, he paused, checking his readings again. The air is more poison than oxygen. Even our best suits will only protect us for a few hours. Security Chief Bang Yanwu was checking his weapons. What about those movement signatures we detected on the way down? Still there, Choi replied. Multiple large life forms in the forest. Some of them are heading this way. Kim made the decision that would define their entire mission. We go out and face whatever comes. Everyone stays together. No one wanders off alone. And remember, we're not here to fight. We're here to survive. The airlock cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. The first breath of Korath Prime's atmosphere that entered their suits made their environmental systems scream warnings. Dr. Shin checked everyone's suit integrity twice before allowing them to step outside. The surface of the plateau was like walking on broken glass. Crystalline formations jutted up at odd angles, creating a maze of sharp edges and hidden crevices. Each step had to be carefully placed to avoid tearing their environmental suits. Marine biologist Dr. Kong Yuri knelt down to examine the ground more closely. These crystals are not natural formations, she announced. They're some kind of biological secretion. Something lived here and left this behind. Something big, added geologist Im Tak-young, pointing to massive gouges in the crystal surface. These marks look like claw marks, but they're each over a meter long. As if summoned by his words, a roar echoed from the thornwood forest. It was a sound that made their bones vibrate deeper and more powerful than anything that had ever lived on Earth. Through the twisted trees, you could see something moving toward them. Spinecrawler, Kim identified from the briefing materials. They're supposed to be the size of tanks. The creature that emerged from the forest made tanks look small. The spinecrawler was easily 15 meters long, with a carapace covered in spikes that glowed with their own inner light. Its 6 legs ended in claws that could tear through starship armor. And its head was nothing but teeth and hunger. Bang Yanwu raised his plasma rifle, but Li stopped him with a gesture. Wait, she said quietly. Let's see what it does. Spinecrawler approached to within 50 meters of their group, then stopped. Its multiple eyes studied them with obvious intelligence. It tilted its massive head, as if trying to understand what these strange new creatures were. Then, surprisingly, it lost interest. The great beast turned away and disappeared back into the forest, leaving the humans standing in shocked silence. That was unexpected, Choi said finally. According to the Vorthok data, spinecrawlers attack anything that moves. Dr. Kang was taking readings with her biological scanner. Maybe they don't see us as threats. We're much smaller than their usual prey, and we don't smell like anything from this planet. As the day progressed, the humans encountered more of Korath Prime's deadly inhabitants. A pack of razorwings circled overhead, their metallic feathers gleaming in the light of the 3 suns. But they, too, seemed uninterested in the human landing party. They're waiting for something, observed Bang Yanwu. Dardars don't usually ignore potential prey unless they're expecting better hunting elsewhere. The answer came when the temperature began to drop. As Korath Prime's 3 suns started to set, the wind picked up and carried with it new sounds. Howls and screams echoed from the forest, the calls of creatures that hunted in the dark. Night predators, Kim realized. The day hunters are avoiding us because they know what's coming. Dr. Shin was monitoring their suit systems. We have maybe 6 hours of full environmental protection left. After that, we'll need to find shelter or risk exposure to the atmosphere. Engineer Seo Jinwoo had been studying the plateau's structure. Captain, I think I found something. There's a cave system. Under the crystalline formations, natural windbreaks and some protection from the environment. They made their way carefully across the treacherous surface to the cave entrance. It was barely large enough for a human to crawl through, which meant it was too small for the larger predators they had seen. Inside, the cave opened up into a surprisingly large chamber. The walls were covered with the same crystalline formations as the surface. But here they glowed with a soft blue light that provided natural illumination. Luminescent, Dr. Kong confirmed. Some kind of algae or bacterial colony living in the crystal matrix. It might even be producing oxygen. As they set up their temporary camp, Choi made a discovery that changed everything. Captain, I'm detecting some unusual energy patterns. The crystals aren't just decorative. They're part of a larger network that extends deep underground. What kind of network? Kim asked. I'm not sure yet, but it's definitely artificial. Or at least, it was created by some form of intelligence. The patterns are too complex to be natural. Outside their cave, the sounds of Korath Prime's night predators grew louder. Creatures that made the spine crawler look gentle were beginning their hunt. But inside their crystal shelter, humans were learning their first important lesson about the deadliest world in the galaxy. It was not simply a world of mindless violence. There were patterns here, systems, and relationships that could be understood. The key was not to fight against Korath Prime, but to find their place within its deadly ecosystem. Dr. Shin was analyzing samples of the crystalline formations when she made another breakthrough. These aren't just shelters, she announced. They're filters. The crystals are actually cleaning the air, removing some of the toxic compounds. So whatever created this network was trying to make the environment more livable, Lee concluded. The question is, what happened to them? As their first night on Korath Prime began, the humans huddled in their crystal cave and listened to the sounds of hell outside. But they were still alive, still thinking, still learning. Above them, in orbit, the Vorthok watched and waited. Commander Thexvor had expected the humans to be dead by now. Instead, they had found shelter and were apparently making discoveries about Korath Prime that the Vorthok themselves had never considered. For the first time in 3,000 years, an off-world species was surviving their first night on the deadliest world in the galaxy. And they were doing it not through strength or weapons, but through understanding. The test was far from over. But humanity had taken its first step toward proving that there was more than one way to be strong. The second dawn on Korath Prime brought new challenges and new discoveries. Captain Kim Dae-ho woke to the sound of engineer Seo Jinwoo working outside their crystal cave. Through the cave entrance, he could see Jinwoo carefully collecting samples of the toxic morning dew that formed on the crystalline surfaces. What are you doing out there? Kim called, checking his chronometer. They had survived 12 hours on the deadliest world in the galaxy. 14 more to go. The dew isn't just water, Jinwoo replied, his voice excited despite the danger. It's condensed atmospheric moisture, but the crystals are changing its chemical composition. Look at this. Jinwoo held up a small container filled with clear liquid. This came from the crystal formations. The toxins have been filtered out. It's not pure water, but it's a lot closer than anything else on this planet. Dr. Shinbora took the container and ran it through her portable analyzer. He's right. Whatever process created these crystals, it's designed to make the environment more livable. The question is why? Science Officer Choi Min-ho was studying his overnight sensor readings. I've been tracking the energy patterns in the crystal network. They're not random. There's a definite communication system at work here. Like a planetary nervous system. Communication between what? Asked Ambassador Lee Suben. I don't know yet, but something is coordinating activities across the entire continent. The patterns change based on environmental conditions, predator movements, even our presence here. As they discussed their findings, a new sound echoed from the Thornwood Forest. It was different from the predator calls they had heard during the night. This was more complex. Almost musical marine biologist Dr. Kang Yuri grabbed her instruments and headed for the cave entrance. That's not a hunting call, some kind of social communication. Through her binoculars, she could see movement. In the forest canopy, But instead of the violent struggles they had expected, she witnessed something remarkable. Different species of predators were gathering in the same area without attacking each other. There's a spine crawler, 3 razor wings, and something I don't recognize, all feeding in the same clearing. She reported, they're not fighting, they're sharing the food source. Kim joined her at the cave entrance. Sharing. The Vorthok briefing said these creatures were mindless killers. Maybe the Vorthok don't understand their own planet as well as they think, Lee observed quietly. The breakthrough came when behavioral specialist Dr. Juan Hanna noticed a pattern in the creature movements. She'd been tracking individual predators since their arrival, and what she discovered changed everything they thought they knew about Koroth Prime. Captain, these aren't random hunting behaviors, she announced. There's a complex social structure at work here. The predators have territories, yes, but they also have cooperative relationships. They're working together. Working together. How? Kim asked. Pack hunting, shared feeding grounds, even what looks like a warning system. When we landed yesterday, that spine crawler wasn't evaluating us as prey. It was deciding whether we were a threat to the ecosystem balance. Dr. Shin was examining more samples from the crystal formations when she made another discovery. These crystals aren't just filters, they're also repositories. They're storing information in their molecular structure. What kind of information? Choi asked. Environmental data, biological patterns, maybe even memories of the species that created them. This entire plateau is like a giant computer designed to monitor and maintain the ecosystem. As the day progressed, the humans began to understand. That Koroth Prime was not the chaotic death world they had expected. It was a carefully balanced system that had been damaged by something long ago. The extreme conditions, the violent predators, the toxic atmosphere, all of it was the result of a broken ecosystem trying to heal itself. Engineer. Ginwoo had been working on their equipment, using materials he had collected from the crystal formations. Captain, I think I can extend our environmental protection indefinitely. How? The crystals can be processed into filters for our suit systems. Instead of fighting the environment, we can work with it. Use the planet's own purification systems to keep us alive, but their greatest test was yet to come. As the afternoon heat began to build, a new sound echoed across the plateau. This was not the musical communication they had heard earlier. This was a challenge roar that made the ground shake beneath their feet. Through the thornwood forest came a creature that dwarfed everything they had seen before. The Dreadmoss stood nearly 20 meters tall, with armor plating that gleamed like black metal and claws that could tear through starship hulls. Its 6 red eyes focused on the human camp with obvious intelligence and hostility. That's what I was expecting, Bang, Yanwu muttered, checking his weapons. Should I engage? Lee said firmly. If this creature wanted us dead, we would be dead already. It's here for a reason. Dr. Wan was studying the Dreadmoss behavior through her instruments. It's not attacking. It's displaying. Those roars are territorial markers. It's telling us we're in its space. So what do? Kim asked. We show respect, Wan replied. In animal behavior, there are ways to acknowledge dominance without challenging it. What followed was the strangest diplomatic negotiation in human history. Dr. Wan approached the massive predator slowly, using body language that showed submission without fear. She stayed low, moved slowly, and kept her hands visible. The Dreadmaw watched her approach. With obvious curiosity, when she was close enough to touch its massive claws, she began to speak in soft, rhythmic tones. Not words, but sounds that mimicked the musical communications they had heard from the forest creatures. For several terrifying minutes, human and predator studied each other. Then, incredibly, the Dreadmaw lost interest. It turned away and headed back into the forest, leaving the humans untouched. What just happened? Kim asked in amazement. We passed a test, one replied. This wasn't about strength or weapons. It was about respect. The Dreadmaw needed to know that we understood our place in the ecosystem. As their second day on Koroth Prime continued, the humans made discovery after discovery. The planet was not a random collection of deadly creatures. It was a damaged but functioning ecosystem with its own rules and
relationships.
Dr. Kong found evidence that many of the predators were actually helping to maintain environmental balance. The spine crawlers cleared dead vegetation that would otherwise create toxic buildup. The razor wings distributed seeds and nutrients across vast distances. Even the fearsome dreadmaws served a purpose, controlling populations of smaller predators. This planet is trying to heal itself, Dr. Shin concluded as she analyzed her data. The extreme conditions aren't natural. They're the result of some ancient catastrophe. But the ecosystem is adapting, trying to restore balance. Which means the Vorthok have been fighting against their own planet for 3,000 years, Lee realized. No wonder they've never been able to truly tame it. As their 26-hour test period entered its final phase, the humans had not just survived on Korath Prime. They had begun to understand it. They had found ways to work with its systems instead of against them, high above in orbit. Commander Verb watched the human camp with growing confusion. By all rights, these soft-bodied creatures should have been dead hours ago. Instead, they seemed to be thriving. They were making modifications to their equipment, collecting samples, apparently communicating with the planet's deadliest predators. 4. The first time in his long life, this Vor began to wonder if the Vorthok approach to their homeworld might be wrong. These humans were doing something his people had never tried. Instead of conquering Korath Prime through strength, they were trying to understand it, and it was working. The deadliest world in the galaxy was teaching humanity its secrets, and humanity was proving that intelligence could triumph where brute force had failed for millennia. The ground shook as Emperor Vexcon's massive battlecruiser descended through Korath Prime's toxic atmosphere. The ship was 10 times larger than any vessel the humans had ever built. Its hull black as the void between stars and covered with weapon ports that could glass an entire continent. Captain Kim Dae-ho watched the Imperial ship land on the far side of the crystalline plateau, its massive bulk crushing the delicate formations beneath its weight. Through his binoculars, he could see Vorthok warriors pouring out of the landing bays. Each one was larger than Commander Vor, and they moved with the deadly grace of perfect predators. "Our 26 hours are up," Ambassador Lee Suben observed calmly. "I suppose they want to see what we accomplished." Dr. Shinboer was still taking readings from her instruments. "The Emperor's ship is interfering with the crystal network. Look at these energy patterns." Science Officer Choi Minho studied her data. "The network is trying to compensate for the disruption. It's like the planet itself is responding to the Imperial presence." The delegation that approached their camp was led by Emperor Vexcon himself, standing nearly 4 meters tall, with armor plating that had been forged from the bones of countless defeated enemies. He was the most terrifying creature any human had ever seen. His 6 arms each ended in claws that could slice through steel, and his multiple eyes burned with the intelligence of a being who had ruled through fear for centuries. Behind him walked Commander Vor, looking almost small beside his emperor. The rest of the delegation consisted of Vorthok scientists and military specialists, all studying the human camp with obvious disbelief. So Emperor Vexcon spoke in a voice like grinding stone. "The soft-fleshed creatures have survived 1 day. On Korath Prime, this is unexpected but not unprecedented. Others have lasted as long through luck or hiding," Your Majesty, Lee replied with a formal bow. "We thank you for this opportunity to prove ourselves worthy of diplomatic relations with your empire." The Emperor's laugh was like the roar of a dreadmaw. "Diplomatic relations? You misunderstand. A small one. Surviving 1 day was merely the first test. If you truly wish to deal with the Vorthok Empire, you must prove your worth beyond simple endurance." Kim felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean, Your Majesty?" Vexcon replied, his eyes glowing with predatory amusement. "That you must venture into the obsidian depths. It's a cavern system beneath this plateau where even the Vorthok fear to tread. There dwell the void-born creatures of living darkness that have resisted all attempts at understanding or control." Commander Vor stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps this challenge is beyond what these creatures can accomplish. The Voidborn have destroyed every expedition we have ever sent into the depths." "Exactly," the Emperor replied. "Humans are truly worthy of our respect. They will succeed where the Vorthok have failed. If not, they will join the countless others who have vanished into the darkness below." Dr. Choi was quietly scanning the ground beneath their feet. "Captain, I'm detecting massive cavern systems extending deep underground. The energy signatures down there are unlike anything we've seen on the surface." "How deep?" Kim asked. "At least several kilometers. But the readings are strange. It's like there's something down there that's actively interfering with our sensors." Emperor Vexcon noticed their conversation. "Yes, the depths resist all attempts at analysis. They exist in a state of perpetual darkness, where sound itself is swallowed and light cannot penetrate more than a few meters. The Voidborn that live there are creatures of pure nightmare, beings that can manipulate reality itself." "What happened to the expeditions you sent?" Lee asked. "They vanished." X4 answered grimly. "No trace was ever found. No bodies, no equipment, no evidence they had ever existed. The depths simply swallowed them whole." Engineer Seogin Woo had been studying the entrance to the cavern system that Dr. Choi had located. "Captain, there's something unusual about this opening. The crystal formations around it are different from the ones on the surface. They're darker, and they're not glowing." "Dead crystals," Dr. Shin confirmed after taking readings. "Whatever energy source powers the surface network doesn't extend into the caverns." Emperor Vexcon watched their preparations with growing interest. "You are not afraid," he observed. "Even knowing that you go to face creatures that have defeated the mightiest warriors of my empire, you show no fear." "Fear serves no purpose." Lee replied simply, "We came here to prove that humanity deserves a place among the galactic powers. If that requires facing the unknown, then we face it." The Emperor's multiple eyes studied her with something that might have been respect. "Very well. You have until the next dawn to enter the obsidian depths and return with proof that you have encountered the Voidborn and survived. Fail, and your species will be forbidden from ever entering Vorthok space again." As the Vorthok delegation withdrew to a safe distance, the humans prepared for their most dangerous challenge yet. The entrance to the obsidian depths was a crack in the crystalline plateau that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Standing at its edge was like looking into the void between stars. "Our equipment won't work down there," Choi reported. "The interference is too strong. We'll be going in blind." "Not entirely blind," Dr. Kong corrected. "I've been studying the ecosystem patterns on the surface. If the Voidborn are truly native to this planet, they must follow some of the same behavioral rules as the surface predators." Security Chief Bang Yeon-woo checked his weapons one final time. "Whatever's down there has been killing Vorthok warriors for millennia. Warriors who are stronger and better armed than we are. Maybe not smarter," Lee pointed out. "The Vorthok approach every challenge with force. They try to dominate and control. What if the Voidborn respond better to a different approach?" Dr. Wan Hana nodded in agreement. "The surface predators responded to respect and understanding. Maybe the creatures in the depths will do the same." As they prepared to descend into the darkness, Kim realized that they were about to attempt something no one had ever tried before. Instead of going into the obsidian depths as conquerors or challengers, they were going as students, hoping to learn rather than defeat. "Stay together," Kim ordered as they approached the entrance. "Whatever happens down there, we face it as a team." The descent began with a narrow passage that wound deep into the planet's crust. Their lights seemed to be swallowed by the darkness ahead, creating a bubble of visibility that extended only a few meters in any direction. The silence was absolute, broken only by the sound of their own breathing. "The walls are smooth," Ginwoo observed, running his hand along the passage. "It's too smooth to be natural. Something carved these tunnels." "Something big," Bang added, noting that the tunnel was wide enough for several dreadmaws to walk side by side. As they descended deeper, the temperature began to drop. Their breath formed clouds in the suddenly frigid air, and frost began to form on their equipment. But strangest of all was the growing sense that they were being watched. "Motion sensors are useless down here," Choi reported. "But I'm getting the feeling we're not alone." "I feel it too," one agreed. "It's like being studied by an intelligence so vast we can't comprehend it." They had been walking for over an hour when they encountered the first sign of the Voidborn. Any of them had expected Instead of a monster or a weapon, they found art. The cavern walls were covered with intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move in their lights. The designs were beautiful and alien, suggesting an intelligence that saw the universe in ways no human or Vorthok could imagine. "This isn't the work of mindless predators," Dr. Shin whispered in amazement. "This is the creation of a sophisticated civilization. It's a civilization that lives in eternal darkness," Lee realized. No wonder they've been hostile to all previous expeditions. Everyone who came here brought light and noise and violence into their quiet world. As they stood in the gallery of alien art, the darkness around them began to change. The shapes moved. At the edge of their vision, too quick and strange to be clearly seen, but for the first time since entering the depths, Kim didn't feel threatened. He felt welcomed. The Voidborn were coming to meet them, and humanity was about to discover that. Even in the deepest darkness, intelligence could find a way to communicate. The Voidborn came forward like living shadows, their forms shifting between darkness and substance in ways that hurt to watch. Captain Kim Dae-ho felt his mind struggling to understand what he was seeing. These creatures seemed to exist in more dimensions than human senses could process. "Stay calm," Ambassador Lee Subin whispered to her team. "Remember, we're here to communicate, not to fight." Dr. Won Hana stepped forward slowly, her hands empty and visible. She had studied alien psychology for 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this moment. The Voidborn moved like liquid night, flowing around the cavern walls with impossible grace. "They're beautiful," Dr. Shin Bora breathed in wonder.
Ow!
"Look at how they move. They're not bound by normal physics."
Ow!
The largest of the Voidborn approached to within a few meters of the human party. In the dim light of their equipment, Kim could see that it was roughly humanoid in shape, but made of something that was neither solid nor gas. Its eyes were points of starlight in an ocean of darkness. How do we talk to something like that? Security Chief Bang Yanwu asked quietly. "We try everything," one replied. She began with simple hand gestures, the universal signs for peace and friendship that had worked with dozens of alien species. The Voidborn watched but did not respond. Next, she tried mathematics, using her portable computer to display simple equations and numerical relationships. Again, the creatures observed but gave no sign of understanding. It was Science Officer Choi Minho who made the breakthrough. He'd been studying the energy patterns in the cavern walls and noticed something remarkable. "The art on the walls?" he said urgently. "It's not just decoration, it's language."
Us.
"What kind of language?" Kim asked. "Mathematical, but not like any we know. Look at these patterns. They're describing relationships between forces we don't have names for. Quantum interactions, dimensional mathematics, things our science is just beginning to understand." Joined him in studying the wall patterns. "These equations are describing the planet's ecosystem. But not just the biological aspects. They're showing the underlying energy systems that make everything work together. The Voidborn aren't just inhabitants of Korath Prime, Lee realized with growing excitement. They're its caretakers. They understand the planet better than anyone." One approached the largest Voidborn again, this time carrying Choi's computer. She displayed their own mathematical representations of what they had learned about Korath Prime's ecosystem. The response was immediate and dramatic. The Voidborn began to glow with soft light that pulsed in complex patterns. The walls around them came alive with new equations and diagrams that appeared and disappeared like living thoughts. It was communication on a level that pushed the limits of human understanding. "They're showing us the planet's history," Choi said in amazement, as he tried to interpret the flowing mathematics. Korath Prime wasn't always a death world. Long ago, it was a garden planet with perfect ecological balance. The story that emerged from the Voidborn's mathematical language was tragic and beautiful. Millions of years ago, Korath Prime had been struck by a cosmic disaster. A dark matter storm had swept through the system, disrupting the planet's natural energy flows and throwing its ecosystem into chaos. The Voidborn were the planet's original inhabitants, beings of pure energy who had survived the catastrophe by retreating underground. For millions of years, they had been working to restore their world's balance, but the process was slow and delicate. The aggressive surface species, the toxic atmosphere, the radiation, Dr. Shin interpreted. It's all the result of the planet trying to heal itself. But the process has been damaged by constant interference. Interference from what? Kim asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The Vorthok, Lee said grimly. 3,000 years of industrial activity, mining, hunting, and warfare. Every time the planet starts to heal their activities. Set it back. The Voidborn's communication became more urgent. They showed equations describing tipping points and cascade failures. Korath Prime was approaching a critical moment where the damage might become irreversible. They're asking for our help, one realized. Not just asking. They're begging. Engineer So Ginwoo studied the technical diagrams the Voidborn were displaying. Some of this is beyond our technology, but not all of it. We could combine human engineering with Vorthok industrial capability and Voidborn knowledge. ... We could heal the planet, Dr. Shin finished. Actually restore it to what it was meant to be. The implications were staggering. The Vorthok had spent 3 millennia believing they were the masters of their world, when in reality they had been unknowingly preventing its recovery. The creatures they hunted for sport were part of a complex system trying to restore ecological balance. We have to go back and tell Emperor Vexcon, Kim decided. This changes everything. The journey back to the surface felt like ascending from one world into another. As they climbed toward the light, Kim could see everything differently. Oh. Crystal formations weren't just shelters. They were part of a planetary healing system. The predators weren't random killers. They were ecosystem engineers, each species playing a role in restoration efforts that had been going on for millions of years. When they emerged from the obsidian depths, they found Emperor Vexcon waiting with his full honor guard. The massive Vorthok ruler looked genuinely surprised to see them alive. Impossible, he growled. No one returns from the depths. What trickery is this? No trickery, Your Majesty, Lee replied calmly. We went as you commanded, and we learned something that will change both our species forever. The revelation that followed shook the Vorthok Empire to its foundation. Using the mathematical proofs the Voidborn had shared, the humans demonstrated that Korath Prime was not a naturally hostile world. It was a damaged paradise trying to heal itself, Emperor. Vexcon listened in stunned silence as Dr. Shin explained how Vorthok industrial activity had been preventing the planet's recovery for millennia. The hunting preserves, the mining operations, the military installations, all of it had been interfering with delicate restoration processes. You are saying, the Emperor said slowly, that we have been fighting against our own world for 3,000 years? Not fighting against it, Lee corrected gently, simply not understanding it. But now we can change that. Working together, our 3 species can accomplish what none could do alone. Commander X-Force stepped forward, his 4 eyes wide with disbelief. The soft-flesh creatures speak truth, my Emperor. I have reviewed their data. The patterns they describe explain phenomena we have observed, but never understood. The transformation that followed was gradual, but profound. Human technology provided precise environmental controls. Vorthok industrial might supplied the raw power needed for planetary engineering. And Voidborn knowledge guided the process with wisdom accumulated over millions of years. Within months, the first signs of change became visible. The toxic clouds began to clear in some regions. New plant species emerged from seeds that had been dormant for millennia. The violent predators became less aggressive as their ecosystem stress decreased. Emperor Vexcon underwent perhaps the greatest change of all. The being who had ruled through fear and strength learned to see power in cooperation and understanding. He established the first joint research stations where Vorthok, human, and Voidborn scientists worked together. I have been Emperor for 800 years, he told Kim during one of their planning sessions. I thought I understood strength. But you have shown me that true strength lies not in domination, but in harmony. Captain Kim Dae-ho established the first permanent human settlement on Korath Prime, not as conquerors, but as partners in the greatest restoration project the galaxy had ever seen. The research station became a symbol of what was possible when different forms of intelligence worked together. The news spread across the galaxy with incredible speed. Humanity, the newest species to achieve interstellar travel, had succeeded where others had failed for millennia. not through superior weapons or advanced technology, but through understanding and cooperation. Dr. Shin stood on the observation deck of the new Joint Research Facility, watching Korath Prime's sky show its first glimpse of natural blue in millions of years. In the distance, she could see Vorthok construction crews working alongside human engineers to build atmospheric processors designed with void-borne specifications. "We came here seeking trade agreements," she said to Ambassador Lee, who had joined her at the window. "Instead, we found something much more valuable." "What's that?" Lee asked. "Proof that intelligence and empathy can overcome any challenge, even those that seem impossible." The deadliest world in the galaxy was becoming a garden again, tended by 3 species working in harmony. The Vorthok learned that strength could mean more than physical power. The humans gained respect throughout the galaxy as peacemakers and problem solvers. And the Voidborn finally had partners in their ancient mission to heal their wounded. And showing the galaxy that cooperation was stronger than conquest, humanity had earned more than diplomatic recognition. They had earned a place as leaders in shaping the future of interstellar civilization. The garden world that Korath Prime was becoming would stand as a monument to what was possible when different forms of life chose understanding over fear, cooperation over conquest, and hope over despair.